incentive fund distribution reports. It's very sad.
Okay. Well, that's good things.
Yeah.
Sad,
Yeah.
All right, so we're at the Police 911 Fire Committee for September 6th, 2023. Present today are Councilman Hodges and Councilman Sprinkle, appointed officials Justin Day and Chandler Phillips. As a Public Safety Commissioner and Finance Officer, Chief of Police Mark DeBoer, and 911 and PSAP Administrator Andrew Hodges. I need that pronounced correctly.
Yeah, yep.
So, looks like we've got about 4 items, maybe 5 that we'll be going over. I'm gonna turn it over to Mark or Justin to start with the police department.
Go ahead, Mark. All right, for the police department, last week I spoke with, almost a week, 2 weeks ago, spoke with FirstNet. Our contact for FirstNet ordered a couple cell phones. They arrived last week. Those are already in service with the officers, 2 cell phones. Only thing left is just getting the mounts installed in the car so the officers don't have to carry them around and potentially lose the cell phone. So I have almost all the parts to get them mounted. So that'll get done this week. Only other thing is officer update. The 2 officers in the academy have completed 2 weeks, have 11 weeks left at LAT, law enforcement training. 2 officers that new other officers we have both completed their FTO in July. They're doing well to the extent that we expect them to be anyway at this point in their careers. And hopefully when they'll be going to the academy after this next one, I believe ends, this current one ends in November, and I believe the next one either starts in December or early part of next year. So we're sitting,
Which 2 officers are at LAT?
that'd be Officer Longcrow and Officer Remmers. We're at LAT currently. So, and that's really the only thing I have.
And after their first week, they both absolutely loved it, so.
And they did come back and work some hours this weekend, helping out with the Midway and the Carnival. So we got to speak with them face to face, and they're learning a lot, having a good time at LAT, except for the physical fitness training. No one likes that, but they're doing well. One officer has already cut 3.5 minutes off that officer's 1.5 mile run just in the first
Wow.
2 weeks. So
Wow,
getting in shape. So,
that's good.
Were they eventful,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
my.
for the most part,
typical?
yeah.
Okay.
Actually, probably a little bit slower
Yeah.
as far as the calls we got, and could be from the heat and whatnot, but there was a little more than a regular weekend amount of activity calls, but it wasn't bad.
The cell phones, do they like them? Not having
They're
them?
using them, so they must like them.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Council, do you have any questions for Officer Moore operational?
I had questions about the weekend too, to see how that compared to prior Labor Day weekends, but from what I witnessed and observed too, it wasn't out of the ordinary. In fact, it was probably a little bit slower than usual, the Labor Day weekend.
Mhm.
Mark, I got only one question. It's kind of not about this. I know those vehicles on 7th Street those to me, they're junk. But he has had them sitting there for quite a time, and it's not just 3 of them. But when you come into town, people over Labor Day said it looked horrible.
Are those the vehicles, I'm assuming those are the vehicles that are just like a
The
block and a half
outdoor
off the
mechanic
highway?
shop.
I mean, he's got oil spilt all over our streets, antifreeze, everything.
Yeah, I actually talked to the owner on, I think it was Friday, about the 72-hour. If
Yeah,
they're
they've
not
been
running.
there for longer
The
than
first two in line, the pickup and the SUV that are closest to the highway, those had been apparently moved. I hadn't seen them moved, but the owner said they had been moved in the last day. The other vehicle, that black, I think it's a Mustang.
One with the broke out windows and everything.
Yeah, that one, if it hasn't been moved since Friday, then I'll have to talk to her again.
I mean, we gotta figure out some way to stop this, because that's one of our main roads coming through town, and it looks horrible. I mean, I've had more complaints about that than anything. And it's just like, why ain't you doing something about it?
I'll take care of the problem.
So, I mean, I'd like to see it that he either stops overhauling them right there, finds a different place to do it in a building or something, or maybe that garage, do it inside that.
Yeah, we can't prevent them from working on their vehicles on the street. The only thing we can prevent is them sitting there for an extended amount of time, longer than 72 hours. Otherwise, it's whatever they do to them while they're parked there, that's legal.
I mean, maybe need to change something with the ordinance deal or whatever, but it just looks,
Both the ordinances and the city of Winter, right?
I just,
That's you as council. They can only enforce what you put.
I know.
in place.
but I'm just saying, I know they've been sitting there quite a while.
Other questions? That's a good question. I had people ask me.
I have seen, as you referred, Mark, I have seen the pickup and the SUV driving. So those do move, but the other one is
It used to
not.
be, he might have had one there he was working on. Now it's like 2 or 3 of them.
Well, the other two, they drive, and they're parked there, the pickup and that white SUV.
Very good. Other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Just gonna go through that page.
So we'll jump to my second thing, because I think the first one's gonna take some time. P25, we talked about that update coming. They completed that last week before. And everything went well. We had some issues with radio coverage right afterwards, but we got reaffiliated with our tower here, which fixed a lot of those problems. And so we're updated and ready to go. They're gonna keep moving eastward, so supposed to have the entire state done by the end of November, I think, so almost there. So the state report that I have, it just goes over the financials, annual report from the board meeting that they had this year, where they went over all the stuff from 2022. I just kind of went through and highlighted a few key points. Some of that did not show up for you because our copier stopped making color copies for some reason. One of the things that I found interesting is right at the beginning, the first page, for 2022 fiscal year, the state had a total revenue of $12,111,022 off of the 911, the $1.25, and then the prepaid phones. Of that 12 million, the state distributed $944,659 to the 11 PSAPs as incentive funds. So, I mean, basically, it ends up being that they distribute about $80,000 a month to the PSAPs, the 11 that qualify, and that's, we go through an audit every couple of years. That's part of the reason that we have to have 2 people staffed and stuff, is to qualify for those incentive funds. But I did find out while going through this that of that 945,000 roughly, we are allotted 3.1% is what we get out of that. They still show that revenues are at least staying the same or increasing a little bit for them.
You go to the financial summaries, exhibit C on page 16.
Yep.
Period. Column number 1, staff contract revenue. There are select PSAPs that receive, select the others do not.
The numbers that go into this report come directly from the PSAPs. I don't know, maybe this is what they reported, but I have a feeling that some of them just did not report before the deadline in March. And so that's why they don't have all the numbers there.
We're one of the ones that did that report. Do we have PSAP contract revenue?
Yes, and if you look past page 17, it's not marked as 18, but the 2022 financial report,
I see.
that's where we showed 21,000 for contract revenues. And then
Sorry
we're,
to interrupt, I had to ask that question.
yeah, and then when we do it again, I think for the next one, I think that'll be 30, because what we put there, Chandra, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the admin fees, because even though our contract states that we're getting so much per line, the per line fees, it's not really a hard number that we can say is a contract fee. So that goes in elsewhere, the per line. So that number there for us is just the admin fee there.
In comparison to the Big County PSAP, for
Yeah.
their contract revenue is substantially larger, almost equal to their expenditures.
Yeah.
Who are they billing?
Pennington County, it's just Pennington and Jackson counties.
Is it every individual in those counties?
I think, I honestly don't know where their revenues come from, Pennington counties. It's, trying to remember, I know we went through like how they bill. And it is, I think it is like the sheriff's office paying the PSAP, but how it goes out, I'm not sure.
Because, Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't some of these counties, they bill to run like a license plate check? They bill to.
Yeah, and I think Pennington County is
Answer
one of
the radio,
those, is they
yeah.
bill for every call for service. And I think they tier there, so if you, and I'm not gonna be able to remember off the top of my head, how many, but they start you at a low tier. If you have anywhere between 100 and 1,000 calls for service a month, they put you in this, you pay this much money per call, and then it goes up from there.
And Andrea, just so that everybody understands, when you say per call, that's not actually a call coming in on the telephone. That's every time you call in on the radio.
Yeah, it's every CAD incident that they create for you. And we create a CAD incident for everything. If Mark calls us to run a license plate, we run it, give it to him, we create a CAD incident. Every traffic stop that they do, it's a CAD incident. Every call that we get from the public is a CAD incident. So it's, whether it's medical, fire, anything at all, it's all a call for service. Metro, I don't know. Pennington County, we did look into theirs a little bit, how they, and they were one of the tier ones. Metro, I don't know how they bill.
So I look at some of the total fund revenues of the other PSAPs, which is in column 6 on Exhibit C. But then I go to total number of calls, and I look at the Winter Police Department PSAP, number of 911 calls and total calls. And I'm comparing that to, we have a higher call volume, 33% higher than Brookings County, 16% higher than Brown County, higher than Central South Dakota Communications. And as I continue down some of the larger ones, nearly double the Huron PSAP.
Our 911 call volume's even higher than Lincoln County's.
Lincoln County. Yeah, Lincoln County, Lawrence County, Meade County, almost equivalent, just a little lighter than Mitchell, higher than the North Central region. Union County, or excuse me, that's Watertown. We're right on par as far as 911 and overall. But then I compare and contrast against the total fund revenues right beside that. And I'm like, I'm just pointing this out for you as council and asking, no fault of your own, but I'm looking at some of this and it doesn't seem justified.
Yeah.
And there's questions that I need answered looking at this when our call volume is higher than Brown County. And I look at their remittances versus ours, 393,000.
And all of those PSAPs, in terms of incentive funds, everybody gets more than we do.
We're right up there with Brookings, ain't we?
We're higher than Brookings.
Yeah, and I, that's one thing that I have not quite figured out yet I have not read it in the report, and I haven't asked the question because I'm just getting through some of it, but I don't know how they determine what percentage of incentive funds the PSAPs get. I don't know if it's population based. It doesn't seem like it's based on call volume, but we are. Of the 11, we get 3.1%. The next closest is probably North Central. They get 3.4, and it just goes up from there. So I don't know if it's population based. I don't know that.
How many total PSAPs here that we're looking at above the black line? There are only 3 that have more 911 calls than we do out of the 28. We get the 4th largest amount of 911 calls.
Yeah. And geographically speaking, we are one of the larger PSAPs. I think it's the population that gets us. But
I'm not-
geographically,
I'm not crying anymore.
Needs to be a
I'm becoming
sparsity factor.
agitated.
I understand. I
Pardon me,
understand.
Councilman?
There needs to be a sparsity factor, I think, figured in, much like school board funding back in '90 when John Koskin come up with the state aid formula to education back then. He built in a sparsity factor. We need one of them if that's what it's based on. We need a sparsity factor built in. That's how you can approach this problem with them. An automatic sparsity factor based on the geography of what we cover.
Yeah. And I couldn't remember the exact year, but it was 2012 was the last time that they've done any sort of adjustments to the per line for what the state is charging people in South Dakota. It's
Yeah.
2012 was the last time that it was increased. And the plan when it increased was actually to let it go back, but they changed their minds on that, thankfully. I did learn a little bit about the 2% surcharge on prepaid phones. I know we've talked about those a little bit. We don't get any of that. We don't get any of that money. The 2% is collected at the store, point of sale, and it goes to Department of Revenue, and Department of Revenue cuts a check to DPS, Department of Public Safety for that, and that money goes directly into the project fund. So prepaid phones, we don't get any.
Where'd you say it goes from Department of Revenue?
Department of Revenue, it goes to Department of Public Safety from there.
To the coordination fund. Expended for operational expenses of the next gen 911 system, annual expenses of the board, and other costs as approved by the board. Sorry, I just underlined that.
Yeah, well, it's highlighted in mine. Like I said, I did not get colored copies out of this.
Which fund?
The, it goes to the 911 coordination fund and expended for the operational expenses of the next gen 911 system, annual expenses of the board, and other costs as approved by the board.
Do we have an idea what that 2% represents? Does it say annually?
I don't, I have not found that yet. If it is in here somewhere, that part, well, it says, see Exhibit A for, let's see if I can find Exhibit A.
Total expenditures in fiscal year 2022 were $5,310,465 with an ending fund balance of $11,323, or $11,323,682.
On page 9 is a real interesting flow chart.
Yes. Page 14 is that Exhibit A that it talks about. It does say the prepaid wireless surcharge, the 2%. It was 1.2 million that they got off of,
What page is that on?
14, Exhibit A. Like the second gray line is where it talks about the prepaid.
I don't have a gray line. Yeah, I see it.
So then that money's going into the next gen 911 project fund, as well as board expenses and stuff, on top of the 74% that they're already putting into that project fund from, as you see on the flow chart there, where they break down that 30% into 74/26.
I question the 70% going to the local PSAPs in that flow chart versus,
That's not accurate. 70% of the revenues go to the counties.
the local PSAPs.
Yeah, they have it local PSAPs. It gets paid to the county, and then the county is able to use that money to pay our contract fees. So each of that 70%, that's not what it says there, but that 70% of that money gets paid as a per line fee to the counties.
So when I look at Yankton Police Department, Winter Police Department, Spearfish Police Department, Mitchell Police, they're not getting that funding.
Not that 70%, no, that's going to the counties down below here.
If you look below that line, then you'll see what each county got distributed.
So,
The
like,
last
for,
two pages, see like Trick County is on here, and it shows that they received $63,192 of that 70%, which then they can use to pay.
They use
for-
that money to pay us.
so what they do is they actually send us a copy of the check that the state gave them with how much they received, and then they write a check to us that's actually more than what they received. So,
Yeah.
yes, we get that money, but it's.
It's from
funneled
the
through
county,
counties.
yeah. It goes to the counties. Eventually, it does come to us. We get it. Cause I don't think none of our counties get enough from the state in the line fees to cover their costs for our services completely.
And that's where you see the population densities receive far more funding
Yeah,
because of that.
We actually break that out every month too, so that we put, every time we get a payment, we put in there how much the state pays them versus how much they pay us, and so we actually have that broke down, and we've been collecting that data since before I was here.
So the state keeps how much?
They keep 30%, right?
off the top. And then they get more later.
Yeah.
Because they keep all the 2% that comes out of those.
The prepaid phones, which unfortunately is kind of a big thing where we live.
Both Michelle and Amy would be willing to sit down and chat.
Of what?
At the board. Oh, just to talk about, explain, you guys had some questions.
Did you arrange that?
No.
I have both of their phone numbers.
Okay.
I didn't know you guys were on the boards, so.
That
So
Michelle
if they had-
Deny,
Yep.
and
If you guys have time, could they pick your brains on some of this? Amy Leon, the vice chair, she is the city manager of Yankton, and Michelle is the finance officer of Spearfish.
that answers a couple of your questions that I didn't know. I didn't know where they were from. That helps. So yeah, like Jody mentioned, page 9 there is kind of a flow chart that shows you, although the verbiage on that 70% is not 100% accurate, but in a roundabout way. So yeah, they kind of breaks down what they're doing with that, and it does show the 2% that goes directly to the 911's coordination fund.
Is this on the PSAP website?
I have the link, I can send it to you.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because I started asking questions of Maria, knowing that she was leaving. I was trying to get as much as I could, and she's like, I tell you what, you go to this site, and I bet it's gonna answer most of your questions.
Yeah, so on that spreadsheet that you have,
21 or 22?
22, so your 911 remittances, that's what you get from the county. And then, yeah, your correct, the PSAP contract, that's what we charge from the administration.
Yep.
So both of those are in.
Yep.
So where does it show funding from this program? What column?
The only time we get a state incentive monthly for hosting it, and that's, I want to say around $3,000 a month.
I think in January, it was $2,500 is what we got.
So that's our incentive for being a PSAP each month, and that comes out of that 30% that the state
Yep.
keeps.
Yeah, that's that 945,000 that they, in 2022, are 3% of that.
And they do break down how they come, that's that 3.1%, is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, and how they come up.
That's the part I don't know, is how they come up with which PSAP gets what percentage.
There's 28 of them. You take it times,
Only 11 qualify for the incentive funds.
only 11
Yes.
qualify.
Yes, it's Brookings, Brown County,
Hold on.
Central South Dakota Communications, which is at a pier, Huron PD, Lincoln County Communications, Metro, obviously,
They're big.
Mitchell, North Central Regional, I think that's Watertown.
Yes.
Pennington County, nope, that's not true, because there's Watertown. And us. So those are the 11 qualifying PSAPs that get that 945,000 incentive money. There's only 11 of us of the 28 that meet all the criteria.
And we receive a stipend of $2,500 a month.
Yeah, and that was
Which
what it
is
was in January.
3%.
In February, it was less than that. And I'm sorry, I brought those, I just didn't make,
You're good.
I didn't make a lot of them. And what, I think those are 2 months behind. I think, yeah, in March, we get paid what they got in January. Maybe. Yeah,
Sometimes they're like
that's what the
3 months
report says, is in March, they send us January's money, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah, so the counties are about 3 months behind in paying us, because it takes 2 months for them
Yep.
to get it, and then another month to go through their payment processes.
So we're still the fourth largest PSAP out of the 11 as far as 911 calls.
This is the Aberdeen. Yeah, and like I said, I'll continue to go through the stuff. One of the things that I wanna look at for sure is, our PSAP geographically, our coverage area versus the others, and then, get an idea on population too. Be able to put all those side by side, so we have that too.
I think you need to find specifically why we're the fourth largest PSAP and we're getting
3%.
almost the least percent. I'd like, as a councilman in Winter, I'd like to know that. Why? I mean,
For sure.
what goes into that? Like, I know Craig Price personally, I could ask Craig, I guess, what I could find out from him what's going on, but, it just doesn't seem quite fair. you know,
Agreed.
Looking at these numbers.
Yeah. And that's my assumption is, and it's an assumption for now, but it's gotta be population based. Because like you said, you know, numbers here, looking at call volume, there's really no reason
Undeniable.
why some of these PSAPs that we take more calls than, or are at least very comparable to, are getting more than we are. And, you know, for some of them, it's just 1% or 2%, but that percent or two is another $1,200 every month, so.
When we did that first study a couple years ago, and we were looking, and we came up with the schedule per radio call, we'd kind of broken down some of the fees of, and now nobody's offering that schedule to us anymore, are they?
Well, I haven't reached back out since, and I do think that some places did change because as we were reaching out, we had people asking the same of us, because, and another PSAP, I can't remember which one right off the top of my head, a little further east, started doing the same thing we were doing, and they're county-based, so they were going to their commissioners and trying to change the way that they were billing. That was always the bump that we ran into, was the other ways that the PSAPs were billing out. It did generate more revenue for us, but it also, it put us very comparable to what the other PSAPs would charge them, and some of them were even less.
Anything else on 911 council? Fire department? TBD, what's
To be
that?
determined, and there was determined, there is nothing for this week.
You reached out. Okay. Council, you look wore out after a Tuesday meeting. You guys okay? Any other questions that you may have? Anything else, you guys, that come up after you wrote the itinerary? The agenda? I got a lot. I'm happy. Okay, Brandon, if you'll pour it out. Or Justin.